Welcome into an edition of the Gurus podcast. It's just me today, X, doing this on vacation. As you can tell, a pretty stripped down layout for me. But I had to talk about Love Island episode one today. Before I begin, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We might as well just get right into it. And I want to preface this entire review with saying, I knew nothing about this show heading into this. The only semblance of knowledge I had was from TikTok audios about a new bombshell entering the villa. That was literally it. I've never seen clips. I don't know anyone's names. I know nothing of the sort. So we turn it on, and I don't know what I was expecting. I've seen some shows sort of similar to Love Island. I've seen some seasons of Temptation Island. I've seen some of the Bachelor franchise. But when we turn it on for the first time, we get this limp sick music video, which was just absolutely absurd. I compared it to what I would expect the Victoria's Secret fashion shows to start with. Just no one was wearing clothes. We were just dancing all around. We were doing nonstop splits. We were on a water tower. We got fake water going in. We were doing some synchronized dancing with some background characters. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. But I was kind of immediately hooked because if it was this preposterous in the first few minutes, what was the rest of this episode going to entail? So, again, I apologize if I butcher some names, if I butcher some concepts here. I'm very new to this, but I have so many thoughts that we're just going to run through the episode and then I'm going to try to give some insight here. So, the first two people we were actually introduced with were Anaya and Kenzie, and they lose their shit over the sign, "This is where the magic happens." That to them was such a massive deal. And Anaya, who is 23, is looking for her husband, which is a theme with some of these contestants. I love it. I love the absurdity of saying that. No one came out and said, like, hey, I just really want to triple my IG followers. She was really committed to the fact that she thinks she's looking for her husband. There was a lot of ass slapping in her intro video. She has no type. She said short kings are good for her in all this stuff. No color, no nothing here. So shout out to Anaya for being so open. I love the concept of these intro videos where we get these pop songs. The rest of the show has sort of royalty-free, low-end music, but these intros, we had actual radio songs, and then we had like the cap cut open, and they're doing the strut and doing all this stuff. I thought that was hysterical. I really did enjoy that. I thought that was a good way to learn who we're talking about here. Other shows, sometimes you start and it's tough to really learn the names of each contestant. I thought Love Island did a brilliant job of making sure we remembered everyone's name and at least the very minimalist part of what makes them them. So then Anaya and Kenzie start talking about their moon signs. They lose their shit over that as well. Just a lot of, oh my God, I'm so happy to be here. Oh my God, which I expected. But I just, again, coming in for the first time, I didn't think it would be such a huge deal in that sense. Because, the show's a huge deal. It hasn't been on as long as some other reality shows like Big Brother or Survivor or The Challenge. But I do think it's so culturally relevant right now that obviously being on Love Island, you become the name overnight. So I did think that was another thing I was picking up on, just this amazement of everyone being on the show for the most part. We'll get to someone later who didn't seem to care all that much, but there's a reason for that. Then we get Kenzie's intro. She just graduated nursing school from Kennesaw State. She was the one just spamming splits throughout the intro music video and then her solo intro. It was just split after split. She had no other move. I wonder if she's ever done anything else in her entire life because that's all I got from her. We didn't even get a little dance or nothing. It was just split after split. She didn't mention any gymnast background. I thought that was going to come up, but maybe that's just her thing. She talks about later, after the intro, her and Kenzie, both from Georgia, they lose their minds over that. Just a lot of gaga here early on. And then we start to pick up the pace a little bit when Melanie is introduced. Philly girl, she's so real, she's so blunt, she's so fun. Her words, not mine. She describes her dating life as the damaged bikini bin, which I didn't know that existed, obviously, as a man. I never heard of such a thing, but I thought that was rather interesting and pretty funny to self-deprecate in that bizarre way. She offers to pop out kids if it's a real relationship, which I thought was a little bit bizarre because a few moments before that, she mentioned how she can never find a real guy. So she went from being never able to find a real guy to if she does find a real guy, she's ready to pop them kids out. So, I mean, credit to her for that. Both Anaya, Kenzie, and Melanie say they're all delusional about men, which I feel is a prerequisite to get on the show in the first place. They did just say the quiet part out loud. I'm not going to try to pronounce B's name here. B25. She's so fit. Again, their word. She is a Paralympian after all. I believe it's Beatrice. It looks like Beatrice, but it's not. It has some Latin flavor. Beatrice, I believe. Her type is tall, dark, and handsome with a mouth mullet, which I looked up, which I think is just a goatee, but there were some other weird definitions to that I don't feel totally comfortable sharing, but that was a new phrase I learned yesterday. They were all just enamored with her body, which again, she's a Paralympian, so it makes sense. And then we get Trinity, who I think is my favorite person on this entire cast, just because her one-liners are hilarious. She immediately says she hates ugly people, which, sure, okay. She quit her job at a hardware store just to be on this season, what hardware store can't give you a month off or 2 months off? Where are you working? Does Ace Hardware have that strict of parameters about leaving? I thought that was just mind-blowing to me. But, she chose Love Island. She chose those IG followers, those social media influencer money over working at the hardware store, which she acted like was a huge sacrifice. How much was she making at the hardware store? Is that not just close to minimum wage? I don't know. But Trinity, self-described personality hire. She loves sex and loves men. Again, you're on Love Island. I think we can kind of read between the lines here. We do get introduced to the host, Ariana Maddox. I lied. I didn't know one other thing about Love Island. We got into a rabbit hole after watching The Traitors with the Tom Sandoval, Ariana Maddox relationship. So I don't really know what she does on the show besides the fact she hosts, but I do know a little bit about her background with Tom, just from watching Sandoval on Traitors and everyone hating him for cheating on Ariana Maddox. It makes sense watching the show now why everyone has such an affinity for her. Melanie says nothing else has worked in her dating life, so she decided to go on Love Island, which again, I guess there's nothing else you could do. No bar scene, no dating apps. You've exhausted actually every nook and cranny. Again, she's only 24, so whatever you say. And then we get Kenzie talks about how she can only talk to one guy at a time. Seems like a perfect environment for that, Kenzie. And I have a lot of thoughts on Kenzie as we go throughout this episode here, because to me, she was just the one that stuck out for all the wrong reasons. She does mention she's going to get wild, though. Disregard the fact that she can only talk to one guy. This summer, she's getting wild. So, to teach your own there. And I was praying to be here. It says she is definitely a roster gal, which again bodes better for the show. Just admit it. Just admit you're here to talk to everyone else. Again, I'm coming in fresh here. Maybe there are some people who are delusional enough to think they can find their husband or wife on the show, but just say you want to, get around and get some IG followers on both sides for both sets of people. I just want some honesty. I think the guys were a smidge more honest, despite the guy pool here being absolutely reprehensible. The one saving grace here is Sincere, who we get initially. Loves his name, so does everyone else. He has one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard in my entire life, where he says, he won't find his wife at a strip club, but maybe a run club or a museum. Brother, you're on Love Island. Love Island is far more akin to a strip club than a run club or a museum. Huh? I just had the huh face throughout so much of this, but what ups to Sincere for suggesting that he can find his wife here, I guess, and it being different. So, at least he has some positivity. We get Bryce here, who is a long-term model, and he's doing some acting and DJing, as he says, all the LA shit, Everyone thinks he's an F-boy, but he's sensitive on the inside. He's not a simp, but he's sensitive. So, as you are, there's B-roll of him on a chair where he's in his Calvin Klein's, and the chair is in front of him. He's straddling the chair from behind. but the underwear is clearly sized up from what he normally wears because it is so scrunched up. It's so apparent it looks like he's wearing a full diaper. It is so ridiculous. It was one of my favorite pieces of B-roll this entire time. It's very evident one person at one point in his life said he looked like Justin Bieber. That's the vibe he was going for. He doesn't have the charisma of the Biebs. He doesn't have the looks of the Biebs. Doesn't have the personality of the Biebs. But that's what he's trying to go for here, and it just didn't work for me. Sorry, I saw right through it. And he ended his little intro package with, "Life's tough, you know." Well, you're on Love Island, so how tough can it actually be, Bryce? So Kenzie clearly vibing with Bryce. They seem to be great personality matches here. It actually fizzles out in a little bit, but those two I thought were perfect for each other. Then we get Zach, whose older brother is Charlie, who I'm being told was a fan favorite from last season. Again, I didn't watch last season, but that's what I'm being told. His pickup game is not the best, but he does have extensive One Direction knowledge. And this was the point in the show where I'm like, what the hell am I watching? I truly thought this was satire at this point when he's just talking about how he picks up ladies with One Direction knowledge in the Big 2-6, which again, I liked One Direction. I like girly pop music, but what is happening here? That's kind of my main mission statement. What am I watching? I understand the bare bones of the show, where you have all these singles and you see who gets with who and who tries to make a relationship with one another. And I get all of that. I truly do. But these people are caricatures of themselves. It's unbelievable. And I get it. I truly do. It makes for interesting television. I came into this thinking I was going to dump all over this, and I am, and I will continue. But at the same time, it was fascinating. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. These people just don't feel real to me. But again, that's what makes it awesome at the same time. Where Zach says he thinks his girlfriend will be from America. Why? Why do you think that? All these people have the weirdest one-liners, and I just want to ask the follow-up of, how did you come to this conclusion? And then he finishes it off saying he loves an alpha woman in bed. Because that's what this is. We get from One Direction knowledge to thinking he wants his girlfriend to be from America. I think he said he's from Birmingham, England, somewhere in England. And then ends it with he wants an alpha in bed. And if it does come off a random Mad Lib, that's kind of the point, I guess. You know, I'm like, okay. Everyone's like, oh, are you Charlie? And he's like, oh, I'm Zach. I'm his younger brother, and you know that's fun, I guess, for the people that have watched this. For me, it didn't hit the same, but I know there was a lot of talk in the room I was in about that in particular. We move on to Sean, who I think is maybe the most irritating person on this entire cast. He's 29. He's a police officer. He claims he's always hit on at work. He gets the name Officer Sexy Pants. I want to know what guy in the academy called him Officer Sexy Pants as a rib. And he's just taking that to mean he is actually Officer Sexy Pants, which again, I don't think is necessarily the compliment he thinks it is, but regardless, he admits to having a kid from a dating app. And, you know, he wants to find the mom who steps up, not the stepmom. So shout out to Sean, looking for someone to help raise his kid with him on Love Island, of all places. So good luck with that. Final person from the main core 10, Casey, 23, nursing assistant, loves to do the rock peck thing where he's, you know, moving the pecs back and forth. Says he's a pleaser in bed, can do some F-boy shit, but it's all about balance. Yeah. It's all about balance, you know. He can go to anyone, but once he's trying to settle down, you know, he'll be able to settle down here. I truly want to know, because he mentioned briefly that he's working with elderly as a nursing assistant. I do want to know if this is on in the nursing homes. Are there people not only from the nursing homes that he helps out with, or the elderly facilities, right, but around the country? Is this a show? The older demographics, like the baby boomers, the silent generation, are they tuning in to Love Island? I know it's on Peacock, so they would need the help to navigate around, presumably, but I was curious about that. I'd love to hear the people that Casey helps analyze his performance on Love Island here tonight. Then we get this icebreaker compatibility thing where there's 3 doors, and you have to answer the question with the corresponding door, and then you kiss the people on the other side. So let's say there's 2 guys and 2 girls on each sides of the door. You just take turns. The guy kisses both girls, and, you know, the girl kisses both guys, so on and so forth, right? And if there's no one behind your door, you're SOL. That's it. You just stand there and are embarrassed, which we got a few times here. So in between some of the door segments, one of the questions is about what sexual position you prefer. And Sean compares liking doggy style on the first date to being a serial killer. And he's a cop, which makes this comparison even more bizarre. Again, I wish there was someone behind in production that just asked these people to expand upon their points. I just really want to know how he got to that conclusion. I think that's the only thing missing from the show is a mid-game interview. We just pull someone aside and we're like, why the hell did you do that? I would love to hear their thoughts in real time. We do get the confessionals, but not pointed. Again, not really common on reality TV. It is the same style as, like, again, like a Big Brother or Survivor. But I'd love if we got some interview questions, or at least got a producer chiming in now and again. Like, what? Huh? Why did you say that? I think that could add an extra layer to this nonsense. We learned from Zach that he wants to be used and abused. Casey thinks he's being edgy. There's a question about what animal you like more, cats or dogs. And then there's option C, if you're a plant person. He chooses plants for some reason. I was mystified by this. I think he thought that was going to earn him some brownie points and at least one of the women would choose plants, but he just looked like a total goofball. And I think that actually hurt him later on when they choose couples, because they're like, this guy is a bit odd. We get Kenzie being super attracted to Bryce. Again, a theme that we learned earlier. These two just feel like all the way around, just, the way they talk, their thoughts or lack thereof, that they would be a great compatible match. But Bryce has an alleged turtle tongue. I guess that means his tongue is too stiff. Again, not a great kisser, so that turned Kenzie off from Bryce. I will be interested to see if Bryce gets another chance. If, Kenzie kind of takes Bryce under her wing and perhaps teaches him some better kissing techniques. But that ended that little romance there. Trinity admits at one point to needing her phone being checked. There's a phone checking question. Do you check your partner's phone sometimes, always, or never? Or is it acceptable, rather? And Trinity's like, yeah, at one point in my life, you had to check my phone, which is, of the things admitted on the season, between quitting your job and having a child from a dating app and wanting to find someone to help raise them, all this random stuff that we're getting aired out on this show, Officer Sexy Pants, all of this stuff. I think that was one of my favorites. What did you gain from saying this besides a funny moment? Why? And again, I'm going to keep saying that. I'm going to sound like a broken record. There is just a why to all of this. Unprovoked is crazy. I could see if someone asked her and she just gave a blunt response, but she just did that on her own whim. And I think that's why Trinity's my favorite. She is blunt. She is funny. Her timing of these quips are just fantastic. So I really enjoyed Trinity here a lot. And I do think from an attractiveness standpoint, for the men and the women, she is, on the higher end of that here. Sean and Beatrice kiss 3 times. That's the main beat throughout this door icebreaker, that Sean and Beatrice are getting a bit steamy. We immediately, though, transition into forming the 5 couples straight from that. So it is obvious that, like, Sean and Beatrice are going to be one of those couples, and sure enough, Beatrice goes to Sean's door. So the women get to choose the guy that they want. They line up behind the door. And I do wonder how fast they have to line up, because if I'm one of these ladies, I don't want to necessarily be rejected. I don't know how much of them care about this. I know Kenzie mentioned either probably earlier and later, that she hates that, but just go behind the guy that has no one there. So, like, if you're walking to the leftmost door and you see someone also making a beeline there, I'd probably just zag the other way. I'd forgo the embarrassment, and, you're just starting out, like, I didn't know immediately that this was super unbinding, that when you locked up as couples, you can undo that within like 24 hours. I thought there'd be a little bit more longevity there. So when it's that fast, why waste time? Just go behind one of the single person's door, and you might enjoy them and you might not. But I assume, like, it happens so fast, you don't have time to, like, skirt over. So Bryce gets Trinity. He's stoked about that. And he says she kisses at the perfect tempo. When I'm looking for a partner, I'm thinking about the tempo they kiss at. That's really important. Casey gets skunked. I do wonder if that plant question just gave him bad vibes from the rest of the cast. They're like, what is he trying to accomplish here? We're done with him. Sincere gets 2 behind his door, and Melanie and Anaya. He does choose Melanie, which is a big deal here because Anaya obviously has to go to KC. But I think that worked out very well for both of them. And I did like this element of the show where there's always these choices having to be made, forcing conflict. Because Casey says, like, he was expecting Anaya behind the door. I thought perhaps that we'd get a little bit more attention here between maybe, Melanie and Anaya both going for the same guy, and Anaya loses out there. Perhaps between Casey and Sincere. Sincere got 2 ladies behind his door, and Casey got none. I heard that kind of stuff usually happens later on once tension builds up. But I do like that that's always there as an underlying factor. There's all these potential arguments that could be spewed just by these little things the producers line up, having the ladies choose. I thought that was a brilliant choice. And then Zach gets Kenzie, which I didn't necessarily see their chemistry throughout, and Zach didn't either. So I thought that was a bit of a surprising choice. So that's all the 5 couples that we get here. So then we break out into like the little rooms. They're starting to mingle with one another. Sincere's first question is about Melanie's breakfast favorites, which I totally did not understand as a first-time viewer. I do think the concept of cooking the couple breakfast, like whoever you're paired up with, breakfast, I think that's hilarious because I heard in the past that sometimes if someone's a bad cook or they don't cook what the other person wants, that is a thing. Or if they don't bring breakfast at all, that is a big storyline beat. I didn't know that. So I immediately wrote down, what in the world is this guy talking about? These people are just spewing AI. But once I learned that was an actual thing, I'm like, okay, Sincere's back on my good side. One of my more likable people from this cast. Then we get over to Kenzie and Zach. She suggests she talks through her eyes, which when she said that, all I wanted to do was roll mine because Kenzie talking here was one of the worst parts about this entire episode. Her one-liners were just super conceited. They were super out of touch. They had no depth. They weren't even like funny bad. They were just annoying. She reminded me of like those Disney Channel Mean Girls from the 2000s, 2010s, where they're attractive, right? But their lines are so dumb where it's supposed to be comedic even though they're having this extra edge to them. Kenzie here, I'm just not seeing it. She is pretty. Don't get me wrong. They're all on Love Island. They're all, a lot of them are casted for their looks and their personality. I didn't see the appeal with her as a person, as a character on my screen. I just thought she was completely brutal to listen to. We move over to Bryce, talks about fixing garbage trucks, which gets a Prince Charming shout from Trinity. I don't remember that part of the movies of Prince Charming, fixing garbage trucks, but, to teach your own. Then they make out, which, natural transition. Bryce being a little self-deprecating. Trinity's, no, that's so hot. Someone's got to do those jobs. And then they just make out. Awesome. Sean suggests he'll be heavily aroused watching Bay run, which, again, this Sean guy, good character. He's a good, I wouldn't say he's a villain. He doesn't say anything mean or negative, perhaps. He is just so ridiculous as far as he's so full of himself, but he's also so horny at the same time. He just can't even help himself in some of these confessionals with what he's saying. And then we get probably the highlight of the episode where he's talking about country music and Bay's, I'd much rather acquire another disability than to listen to countray music. Which you could tell pisses Sean off. He tries to do the thing where someone just shits on something you like, where he's like, no, give it a chance. You'll listen to it more. You'll listen to it more. Like, no worries. But I don't think B's having it here. I think the more time she spends with this guy, the less of an attraction she has for him, despite him obviously being a good-looking dude. We go back to Kenzie and Zach, where Kenzie loves Zach's accent. Just loves it. That British accent. But she's concerned that he's never dated a blonde. This is such a big deal for her that he's never dated a blonde. Which, again, I've never dated a blonde. Does that mean you can't date a blonde again? She was trying to associate it with the fact that because he's never dated a blonde, that must be that he's not into blondes. But how do you come to that conclusion? unless you are really getting around. If he said, I've never dated a redhead, does that mean he's not attracted to any redheads? That just doesn't make any sense to me, but it's Kenzie speaking, so that's just what happens when Kenzie speaks. You just get annoyed a little bit and roll your eyes and keep it moving. Because again, she just has go-away heat for me. When she's on the screen, I'm like, yeah, she's nice enough to look at, I guess, but everything that comes out of her mouth is just questionable. Anaya does get good vibes from Casey, which again, these two were forced on each other, but it seems they're one of the more compatible matches of all these couples. She thinks he's super handsome, and she's clearly into him. The way she talks about him, I think, is actually endearing. There's clearly something there. Beatrice does not like the fact that Shauna has a kid, which she announced, I'm almost positive, before she matched with him in the door challenge thing. I don't understand why that came up after. Was that because he was into country music and then she had to use the kid thing against him? Because she mentions this kid element a few times where she's like, I do not want to be stepmommy, I believe is a line that gets tossed out. But that was not, I'm almost positive that was knowledge before. So I know he's handsome, and I know you had some good makeout with them, but did you not think about that when you were behind the doors? You could have just went to someone else if that was that big of a deal breaker for you, which it clearly was, because again, she keeps repeating it over and over again. Anaya is really big on fairy tales and just wants to be courted around, which Casey responds with saying, he's not putting his jacket on the puddle for her, which I died laughing at. That was such a good line. I don't know if he caught himself or if he just wasn't articulating himself great, because I think Casey does have a decent head on his shoulders here. Because he was basically talking about how he doesn't want to be chivalrous, and then caught himself. He's like, hold on, I'll hold the door for you and stuff like that. But I'm not doing these movie things where I'm, getting my jacket all wet for you so you can step over the puddle. I'm not doing that. And they had a little bit of a laugh about that. He did correct himself, because there was a split second where I thought Anaya was going to go off on him. And then he kind of got her back, and they talked about how they had a good connection. So that's good. Melanie's super into Sincere. That's the other couple that I think has real chemistry. She compares it to a school crush, and you can see it. They get a little giddy here. Sincere's like, I can't wait anymore. I have to kiss you now. So naturally, they start making out. Melanie's like, she's touching the lip gloss, making sure the lip gloss is good. And then they keep macking out. Fine enough. I can't tell you what they like about each other besides they're both attractive. But, at some point, I assume that's all it takes on the show. You don't need a hell of a lot of personal connection. As long as you have that sexual tension, that's all that matters to an extent. Kenzie mentions that she wants to be enamored. She brings up again that Zach has never been with a blonde. She wants to be lusted over. She was complaining about how he only complimented her eyes, didn't say, oh my God, you're so beautiful. I get it to an extent. How about you get to know each other and you can be enamored all the way around? Just a thought. But it is Love Island. It is Love Island. So, you want to be like, oh my God, you're the baddest. I believe Zach says that about Trinity. Or, guys, I got the baddest one here. I think she was expecting maybe something like that and doesn't get it here. So, unfortunate. Bryce says that about Trinity. And Kenzie was just expecting similar treatment. But to her face, not just with the boys. Not with the boys talk. She wanted that for herself. So, I get it, but just more Kenzie nonsense. So we get the grand finale here of the stay or go. So there's a red dot and a green dot. You either keep your connection with the couple that you had with the partnership, or you go to the red dot to explore something new. So Bay rejects Sean, even though Sean would have accepted her. Zach rejects Kenzie, even though Kenzie would have accepted Zach. There's a mutual rejection from Bryce and Trinity, which I was kind of confused about, because Trinity did make it a point to continuously say that she doesn't go for guys like Bryce. I couldn't tell if that meant like a white guy or a West Coast airhead. I didn't know exactly what she was trying to imply there, but mutual rejection, despite, Bryce said he had the baddest girl there. So, shout out Bryce, going beyond the looks. So maybe I should give him a little more credit than I have right now. We do get mutual exceptions to keep their connection going between Casey and Anaya, and Sincere and Melanie. So we do get two couples staying together, but the other three broken up. And then all of a sudden, two new bombshells have entered the villa. I love this concept. I think this is hilarious. I don't always love the idea of new people joining an original cast, But I think for Love Island, it really works because, again, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, this show's superpower. It does a tremendous job of naturally setting these people up for chaos. They're not forcing it, right? It is very simple situations. You either want to stay with this person or not. You're giving them the option. It's not like you're manufacturing it by, stirring up drama, by making them do ridiculous things. It is incredibly simplistic. And adding these two new bombshells just really turned up the episode a notch. We get Kata and Gabriel. Gabriel is from Brazil and is a great kisser. Has a smidge of J Balvin to him, just a teeny tiny bit. He is probably the most full of himself on this entire cast. Later, we get him unbuttoning the shirt. He's good looking and has a great bod, but I was expecting, like the most toned six-pack ever. Again, good fitness level, but when he's taking off the buttons and he's flexing, I'm like, dude, I think Sean's got you beat in the physique column. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just throwing that out there. But clearly, very attractive guy. Use that to his advantage. Goes up to May early, and they're just going to town. The Bay early, excuse me, and they're just going to town. They're just making out constantly, and just having a good time. Clearly, Bay is infatuated with him from the jump. You could see that was probably the steamiest makeout of the entire episode. And I'm like, okay, this guy's here for his personality too, which I appreciated. I want some villains on my screen. I want some chaos. We just did a whole season reviewing Survivor. We've done the last 2 seasons, and one of our biggest complaints is we need bad people on TV again. Now, I do know they kicked someone off last year because video surfaced of them saying the N-word, and someone got kicked off this year because before the season even started, videos surfaced of them saying the N-word. I don't necessarily want people like that on my screen, but I do want some just bottom-of-the-barrel a-holes. I do want that, as long as they're not, making fun of people for their skin tone. If they're just calling people names and stuff because they hate them, I'm fine with that. We need a better representation of real life. There's some people that are just total douchebags, and I think that's good for television, and I think Gabriel is here on Love Island for that exact reason, and he's just making out with everyone. I thought at first that they were going up to the person that they wanted to have a connection with, which I thought would have been a smidge better for the segment, but, it was fun regardless. On the woman's side, we get Kata from New Hampshire. She says that she's going to make all the other women fall to their knees. So she's coming in hot, too. She chooses Zach immediately. They get it on and then, make out with everyone else. And then we get the tease for the next episode of Gabriel and Kata walking some people into the house, presumably to make out with them or talk to them. Whatever they're going to do, that's the tease for the next episode. Look, I enjoyed this. I thought this was the right amount of trash TV mixed with actually interesting human elements as well. I think the cast is a smidge weak as far as personalities go. I think everyone's, fairly attractive. I was expecting maybe a smidge up, specifically from the guys. This is coming from a guy. I thought most of the guys sucked, both his personalities, and I was like, okay, they could have chose maybe a smidge more attractive guys. Just my opinion. Who am I to say? But that is the hallmark of the show. So, I just thought that was interesting to throw in there. I will say there are some redeemable characters. I did like Sincere as a character. I thought he was pretty good. Again, trying to toe the line between being a bit conceited, but also having a heart. I like Trinity. I thought she was hilarious. I, again, loved her quips, loved her one-liners. Thought she had a good head on her shoulders, despite, again, leaving her hardware job to be Love Island. I know Bay was a favorite, the Paralympian. All I got from her was that she hates country music and was a Paralympian, which again, badass that she's a Paralympian. All Paralympians to do what they do, it goes hand in hand that they're just amazing athletes, right? To overcome what they have to overcome. But I just didn't get a lot of depth with her. And people were saying, oh, she's funny. Yeah, the country line was pretty funny, but they just kept talking about how fit she was and how she hates kids. I just wasn't getting enough from her to have a full-on opinion quite yet. KC was fine. He was another one. Thought was, fine. Zach, I think, will get a lot of buzz because of his family relations. Probably the most conventionally attractive guy they had. Just the dark features, tall, curly hair, all of that stuff. But again, wasn't getting a ton from him when he was on screen. He was just like Kenzie's not my type. I don't want to cuddle with her. I don't really want a relationship with her. That's what he was saying throughout his screen time. So a little bit more of him would be appreciated. He'll get a lot of buzz for the aforementioned reasons, but I wasn't seeing it with him. Bryce sucked. I mean, again, really attractive guy, I guess, conventionally, but he just didn't have enough charisma or character for my liking. I could have got a little bit more from him. And I thought was totally fine. Not offensive, not great, totally fine. Melanie, again, Philly girl, so real, so blunt. Not a ton there. Again, only one episode in, so we'll see how I feel about these characters going forward. I think it's a good cast. I don't think it's a great cast. I would have loved one or two more wild card characters. We got some really well-rounded, attractive women that will make for good TV. I'm not sure we got that with the guys. The more attractive guys in Bryce and Zach, I just wasn't getting a ton from. Again, just my opinion. And then Sean, I think, could be a solid character, but he was so enamored with B when that kind of B Bay, whatever the hell her name is, when that fell apart, I was like, okay, so what is this guy now? Is he going to go on a rampage now? Is he going to turn up the intensity? I hope we do see that. There could be something there. He's incredibly annoying, but I am going to give him a benefit of doubt as far as a TV personality. And then Casey, again, just a nice dude from what we could tell. Again, maybe has a little bit of a darker side with his F-boy tendencies, but I just thought he was a really genuine guy. So those are my Love Island thoughts. I don't know what to expect going forward, really, because I don't know how this works. I know there's more bombshells being introduced. I think there is this underlying TNT that we got laid yesterday where there is going to be stuff that blows up down the line. I was expecting a bit more nuclear reactions on night one. Again, that's my opinion, not knowing anything about how this show works. We didn't really get a blow up or a fight. I thought there'd be something about someone choosing something that someone else wanted to be with, something of that sort. But we didn't get that. It was pretty tame. But I can see why people love the show. I do. I saw the foundation of something that could be electrifying. I heard it's on a ton, so we'll check up whenever something happens, I guess, maybe a week, maybe when there's a big blow up. But I do see the hype. I genuinely see the hype. Now, is this something that I'm going to watch every day? Is this something I'm going to choose over other shows I watch? I'm not totally sure quite yet. You know, tonight, as I'm recording this, NBA Finals, I work for the NBA, so it wouldn't take precedent over that. But over other stuff, when there's no, high-level sports on, will I be turning this on? For the time being, yeah, I think I am. They got me in enough where I want to see what happens here. I heard there's challenges as well that play a part, and there's times where fans vote and their opinions matter. I'm into all of that. These are things that we wanted for other shows. I keep mentioning Survivor and Big Brother. Those are shows I've watched my entire life where we want the fans to be more part of the outcomes and decision making. We want, crazier casting, old school, early 2010s, where there's beauty on our screen. Some of these people might be super, out to lunch, but at the same time, that's what I want from my reality TV. I don't want, necessarily 10 people I could see in my town at any given point. You want one or two of those people to be relatable, but you want some of these wild characters. I've never met a Bryce in my life. But that's why, as much as I was annoyed with him, I was like, it's so ridiculous. It is funny at some point, The only person I truly didn't see any redeeming qualities about outside of their looks was Kenzie, where I'm like, perhaps she could cause a blow up. I could see that. She was getting offended pretty easily early on, so I could see, hopefully down the line, her getting into it with some of the guys, even maybe some of the girls, hopefully. But those are my unfiltered thoughts on Love Island 2026 as a first-time ever watcher. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I don't know how frequent I'll be doing this. Hopefully we can get Theo and Mike on here and we can do maybe a weekly recap, maybe, again, just if something massive happens. But I had to talk about this. This was appointment viewing for me yesterday. Theo was like, you have to turn this on. You have to give it a try, and then maybe you can do some content about it. And sure enough, 5 pages of notes later, 45 minutes in, I think it was worth it. If you haven't already, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Follow the Gurus on all platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify. We'll be back soon with another show review or sports podcast, something of the sports. It's a full Guru summer. Expect a lot of content on your timeline in the time being. I am X, and I am the founder of the Gurus. That is all for today. Peace.